Britain and Spain, two nations separated by language and culture, yet bound by economics, tourism, and centuries of history. For most people, the connection conjures images of holidays on the Costa del Sol, tapas in Barcelona, or football rivalries. But beneath the sunshine and sangria lies a serious truth. Spain is one of Britain's most important economic partners. This is the story of how sun, sand, and surplus define Britain's relationship with Spain, a hidden grip that stretches from tourism to trade, from finance to food, and from energy to everyday life. The Anglo-Spanish relationship is centuries old. Rivalry defined much of the past: the Armada, colonial competition, and naval battles. Yet commerce was always present. British merchants traded wool for Spanish wine, and Spanish silver flowed into London markets. By the 20th century, rivalry gave way to partnership. Spain's transition to democracy and entry into the European Union opened new doors. Britain and Spain became partners in trade, tourism, and investment. The historical rivalry faded into football matches and cultural exchanges, while economics took center stage. Spain is one of Britain's largest trading partners. Goods flow daily across the Channel and through Mediterranean ports. Britain imports Spanish fruit, vegetables, wine, and olive oil, staples of British supermarkets. Spanish cars, machinery, and pharmaceuticals also fill British markets. In return, Britain exports chemicals, machinery, and financial services. British firms provide expertise in insurance, banking, and education. Services are a huge part of the relationship. British law firms advise Spanish companies, and Spanish logistics firms manage British supply chains. Tourism is perhaps the most visible service. Millions of British tourists travel to Spain each year, spending billions on hotels, restaurants, and attractions. That spending supports local economies across Spain, from the Balearic Islands to Andalusia. Investment ties are strong. British companies own assets in Spain, from supermarkets to energy projects. Spanish firms own British infrastructure, retail chains, and transport services. Spain's banks and energy companies are major players in Britain. British pension funds invest in Spanish real estate and renewable energy. These flows are not abstract. They create jobs, dividends, and long-term commitments. The property market is a unique dimension. Thousands of British citizens own homes in Spain, creating a steady flow of capital into Spanish real estate. That investment supports construction, local services, and tourism. Energy cooperation is vital. Spain's renewable energy sector is booming, with solar and wind projects leading the way. British firms invest in Spanish renewables, while Spanish companies participate in UK energy projects. Interconnectors and shared grids are less developed than with France, but cooperation is growing. Hydrogen corridors and offshore wind partnerships are emerging. Spain's solar potential complements Britain's wind expertise, creating opportunities for joint projects. Energy is not just about supply, it is about security and sustainability. Britain and Spain both face the challenge of decarbonization, and their cooperation strengthens resilience. Finance binds the two economies. London remains a global capital, but Spanish banks, such as Santander, have a major presence in Britain. Santander UK is one of the largest retail banks, serving millions of British customers. This presence illustrates the depth of financial ties. Spanish capital supports British mortgages, loans, and businesses. British pension funds invest in Spanish assets. Cross-border finance is routine, invisible in daily life, but essential to stability. Brexit introduced challenges, but financial cooperation remains strong. London and Madrid continue to share clients, listings, and regulatory dialogues. Transport is another pillar. Spanish ports handle British imports and exports, while British airports connect millions of passengers to Spain. Airlines such as British Airways, Iberia, and EasyJet operate extensive routes linking cities and holiday destinations. Logistics firms manage flows of goods from Spanish produce to British machinery. Disruptions ripple quickly. A strike in Barcelona or a storm in the Bay of Biscay can affect British supermarkets and factories. The efficiency of these routes is a hidden pillar of stability. Without them, Britain's shelves would look very different. People are the most visible link. Hundreds of thousands of British citizens live in Spain, many retired, others working in tourism, education, or business. Their spending supports local economies, and their presence creates cultural ties. Spanish workers also contribute to Britain, particularly in healthcare, hospitality, and construction. Universities collaborate, and students cross borders for education. Migration is not just a statistic. It is families, friendships, and careers. It is the human glue of the economic relationship. Tourism is the crown jewel of the relationship. Spain is the #1 destination for British tourists. Millions travel each year, spending billions on hotels, restaurants, and attractions. That spending supports local economies across Spain, from the Costa Blanca to the Canary Islands. Tourism is not one-sided. Spanish tourists also visit Britain, though in smaller numbers. Cultural exports flow freely. Spanish food, music, and film enrich Britain, while British theater, television, and fashion thrive in Spain. These exchanges generate spending and strengthen the softer ties that underpin harder economic flows. Risks remain. Brexit introduced customs frictions, particularly around agricultural exports. Political disputes over fishing rights in Gibraltar can disrupt trade and investment confidence. Energy security is another flashpoint. Britain relies on Spanish renewables, and Spain depends on British investment. Disruption in one country affects the other. Tax policy shifts in Spain could alter investment flows. Regulatory divergence in finance could raise costs for firms operating in both markets. These risks are manageable, but they require foresight and cooperation. Opportunities are clear. Joint investment in renewables, hydrogen, and offshore wind could deepen ties. Coordinated regulation in fintech and digital services would attract international capital. Expanding interconnectors and logistics cooperation would strengthen resilience. Universities and research centers could scale up joint projects in AI, biotech, and climate science. Each opportunity builds on existing strengths, turning dependence into leverage for both sides. Policy will determine whether the relationship thrives. Aligning customs procedures, streamlining logistics paperwork, and coordinating energy regulation would reduce friction. Negotiating targeted financial equivalence agreements would keep capital flowing. Supporting joint infrastructure projects would anchor investment. Policymakers must balance sovereignty with pragmatism, recognizing that cooperation often delivers more than competition. Behind the numbers are human choices. A British retiree buying a home in Alicante, a Spanish nurse working in Manchester, a student from Leeds studying in Madrid. These decisions accumulate into billions of pounds of trade and investment. The relationship is not abstract. It is lived daily by workers, entrepreneurs, and families who depend on its stability. Looking ahead, Britain and Spain will remain bound by geography, history, and economics. The Mediterranean will stay a busy highway, Madrid will remain a financial partner, and energy cooperation will grow. The balance will shift with politics and markets, but the fundamentals are strong. Britain depends on Spain, and Spain depends on Britain. The challenge is to manage that dependence wisely, turning vulnerability into shared strength. The UK-Spain economic relationship is not just about holidays and sunshine. It is about resilience, opportunity, and the choices that shape everyday life. What happens in Madrid echoes in London, and what happens in London echoes in Spanish boardrooms and households. This is Britain's hidden grip, a billion-pound balancing act that will define the next decade.